Rather than face their own moral failings, the media demonize lawful gun owners, amplify their cries for more laws, and fill the national media with misinformation and dishonest thinking that only delay meaningful action and all but guarantee that the next atrocity is only a news cycle away.
Jerry Agar for Ezra Levant. Of late, for obvious reasons, the gun debate rages anew. Do ordinary people understand guns, or do they just hate something scary like they fear sharks? Orlando Mancina's International Tactical Training Academy in Calgary, Alberta, is dedicated to responsible firearms safety training and specializes in all aspects of firearms from beginners to advanced students. Orlando joins me now. Welcome, sir.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Good to have you. At the NRA convention earlier, we saw Wayne LaPierre making a statement, and then my opening comment here. Do you think the average citizen across the country, Canada and the United States, has a real understanding of guns, or just a fear, maybe?
I don't think it's a fear. I think it's just a matter of understanding, and that comes with education, doing proper research, like the RCMP website. There's a lot of information out there. It's just a matter of going on the computer and or contact certified instructors, and the information is easily available.
All right, but we're going to watch another clip here quickly from Wayne LaPierre, because he makes a comment that, you know, it's part of our job in the media to be responsible in terms of how we help educate the public on issues, and he doesn't think that's happening. Here's Wayne LaPierre.
The media calls semi-automatic firearms machine guns. They claim these civilian semi-automatic firearms are used by the military. They tell us that the .223 round is one of the most powerful rifle calibers. When all of these claims are factually untrue, they don't know what they're talking about.
I have to say, Orlando, that I think he's right.
Sorry, Jerry, it's a little bit hard to understand what he was saying.
Okay, essentially, I'll just tell you, essentially what he said is the media will report on a gun, they get it wrong. The media doesn't know what they're talking about. Often the people reporting on guns in the media don't know much about guns. Well,
are you referring just to the United States or Canada?
Well, I think both.
Well, I think in general, every time you put a firearms on the news, they're all considered bad guns. I mean, I think the people need to be a little bit more educated. I don't think it's the responsibility of the media to educate people on firearms. I think the people need to be educated on guns, and responsible firearms in the whole. I think they are educated. It's just the people that don't deal with firearms. All guns are bad. Well,
yeah,
they're not.
You've brought some things you wanted to show us, so let's go ahead and take a look at those things.
Well, I think one of the major questions that I found is how do people transport classifications of firearms that are considered restricted? I do have some props here. I didn't bring real guns for obvious reasons, but there are strict rules when transporting a restricted firearms. One of it has to be unloaded. It has to be made inoperable by either putting a secure locking device, which is a trigger lock or a cable lock. The cable lock or trigger lock goes right into the firearm. It's locked. The responsible firearm owner must have proper documentation, which is called the ATT, authorization to transport from your home to an approved firearm range. Once that's in place, there's no ammunition in the case. We lock the case up with the keys. We put it in the trunk of the vehicle. Then once you drive to the range, you bring the firearm to the range, you open it up in a safe range environment, and reverse the procedure once you're done and go home.
All right, so it's quite obvious then that we have situations where people are firing bullets around in the city or in the country and hitting people. They're operating illegally right from the start before the bullet ever hits anyone.
Definitely. You can only discharge of firearms where you can legally discharge it. If it's a restricted firearm, it must be discharged. We're talking about average firearms owners. We're not talking about law enforcement, military.
Sure. Let me
We're
ask you
talking about
something else.
citizens,
Right, I understand. I want to ask you something else so we don't run out of time here. How long would it take the average Canadian to get a permit to have a gun and be able to take it to a range as you've just described?
Once the person has received and passed, whether it's the Canadian non-restricted or restricted firearms safety course, he will then apply for a PAL, which is possession and acquisition license. That takes a minimum of 30 days after he submits the paperwork. So it takes 30 days to get his license, minimum.
All right. I grew up on a farm and around the farm and in a small town years ago, and we just had guns and we shot them wherever we wanted to. I think the world has changed in that regard in Canada, correct?
Yes. I mean, whether it's a non-restricted or a restricted firearm or prohibited firearm, the owner of the firearms must possess a firearms license pertaining to that classification. There's no firearms owners that have a firearm that should not have the restricted or non-restricted license. They all need the license to own the firearm.
The AR-15 is a gun that is of much conversation right now because of the shootings in Connecticut. Is that a gun that can be owned in Canada? And if so, what would the restrictions be?
Yes, the AR-15 style or variants can definitely be owned in Canada. Most of them are considered non-restricted if they're semi-automatic. They fall into prohibited if they're fully automatic. But the average Canadian, if he passes the restricted firearms safety course and belongs to a range, an approved range, or as a collector, he can then own a AR-15 style or variant.
All right. You know what people say to me? I've had politicians say it to me in the last week. There's just no reason for ordinary people to own guns. How do you respond to that?
Well, in my profession, a firearm is a firearm. Whether it's a hunting shotgun, an AR-15, as Canadians, I think we should have the right to go through the proper channels, acquire the firearms, and for sporting events and target practicing, we should all be allowed to have our own firearm. There's no different than a person hunting. Some people like to go to the range and shoot targets. Some people like to go hunting. So I think that we should all have that privilege.
Orlando, thanks for your time here today.
Oh, you're quite welcome. My pleasure.